Hi, everyone, and welcome to Whether or Not. I'm WABC Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg, and we're sponsored today by TD Bank. I wanted to jump on this episode and talk about the sweltering stretch that we have to deal with, which will take us through the weekend, if not through Monday. And that is really the calling card of this hot stretch, is its staying power. We're not smashing records. We're not going to levels that are unprecedented. We've had June heat waves. In fact, back in 2021, we had 2 4-day heat waves. We may not even establish an official heat wave in New York City. We certainly will in inland areas. But the bottom line is we are in this for the long haul. And even after a bit of a break or reprieve from the humidity, come Tuesday next week, the overall pattern through June into early July favors much above normal temperatures. So let's get right into it. First of all, Tuesday was actually the second 90-degree day in inland sections, places like Newark. We could actually have an 8-day heat wave in some of our inland areas, where again, as New York City may not establish an official heat wave. I'll explain why in just a second. The heat continues to build. Regardless of a 9 handle and some of the high temperatures, the heat is building through the week. The coastal area is obviously more comfortable. However, that heat is expanding eastward and certainly will engulf New York City, parts of western Long Island, even parts of interior Connecticut, no doubt about it. Jersey Shore, sure, we're going to get sea breezes, but with more of a south wind, the south-facing shores of Connecticut and Long Island benefit more from that, whereas, just inland on the Jersey Shore, it can still feel piping hot. Please pace yourself. Please keep hydrated. We'll talk about some more tips in just a moment. Heat advisories. They're going into effect inland. They go into effect inland through Wednesday. I think Thursday we'll probably see these heat advisories up for New York City and again, western Long Island as well. Even more concerning is the excessive heat watches that have already been posted for Thursday through the weekend over parts of interior New Jersey. And that's for feel-like readings over 100. And we're talking even in Monmouth and Ocean County, just away from the coastline, those excessive heat watches in effect for those dangerous feel-like readings. Air quality has been compromised. We really saw a nosedive in some of the air quality indices across the area. Whenever it's north of 100, it becomes unhealthy for sensitive groups. Well, it was peaking out around 150 today. So in general, air getting unhealthy. If you have sensitivity to that, make sure you're taking frequent breaks. And even for people who do not feel any type of stress in a hot situation with unhealthy air quality, you may feel it. It's not great outside in terms of being able to breathe in this thick, warm air mass. So just be aware of that and take frequent breaks. A snapshot of those feel-like readings on your Wednesday would show about a 90 in New York City, maybe 92 in the afternoon, where it could be 95 to 100 from places like Morristown to Sussex, to West Milford, to Newburgh, to Poughkeepsie. Stifling heat inland. It's definitely a different experience inland in this hot stretch when it is close to the coast. We don't have a blowtorch westerly wind with this. It's more of a southwesterly wind, so coastal areas get the influence of that marine air. And a June heat wave is different than an August heat wave in that the temperatures of the water are still climbing through the 60s to around 70 rather than upper 70s. So it has a more pronounced impact. I was even noticing some of the Long Island Sound air make it all the way to interior Connecticut. Places like Danbury were dropping through the low and middle 80s on Tuesday, whereas parts of the Hudson Valley, place like Cold Spring was already at 90 degrees. So you can get some of that Long Island Sound air getting into places like White Plains and Bedford and Ridgefield, Connecticut. But once you get maybe 20 miles inland, forget it. You're going to be in that stifling heat. One other thing to consider, by the way, is even if it's in even the mid-80s to lower 90s, where it is along the coast and into New York City, make sure now that we get into the practice so that we're not leaving anybody inside the car, which heats up super quick. Even an 85-degree day, after 10 minutes in the hot sun, you're at 104 degrees. So it becomes super dangerous. So basically, if it breathes, it shouldn't be in the car, shouldn't leave it in the car. Be extra vigilant about that. We're all in a rush. We make the mistake of doing that, or we think, I can run in and run out, and it takes longer than it should, and all of a sudden, we're in some dangerous territory. Again, comparing the overall temperatures, and I talked about New York City, we're going to be in the 90s both Thursday and Friday. This all peaks on Friday in the mid-90s. but there's a front which actually comes through that may switch the wind direction even more off the water, and we come up short of 90 on Saturday. So even though we may get 3 90-degree days in this stretch, we may not get them back to back to back, meaning we may not get an official heat wave in New York City. But it's a hot stretch nonetheless that will continue into early next week, so keep that in mind. Whereas, again, a place like Newark that already is now in its second day here of 90-degree temperatures will be scorching right through early next week. In terms of thunder shower threats, there are some pop-up storms that will be out that kind of bubble up in the atmosphere, and days like this doesn't take much to spark one of those. They're mainly inland over the next couple of days. Once we get into Friday and into the weekend, there's probably more widespread afternoon pop-up storms. Nothing that you cancel outdoor plans for, but I think more of the area will experience in that. Still a better chance north of the city, but a couple of thunder showers could even get down into the city once we get into Friday, Saturday, and even into Sunday. That front actually lifts north on Sunday, so we have probably a better chance in the city of hitting 90 on Sunday than we do during the day on Saturday. Once again, drink plenty of fluids, stay in the air conditioning, limit time in that midday sun, light and loose weight clothing. Do not go out and do your run that you want to do in the middle of the day. You know that this is just common sense stuff. We're just a little out of practice. Check on the neighbors and, of course, the pets. They're going through this too. Now, in terms of knowing your body, in terms of heat exhaustion, if you're feeling a little lightheaded, you're really pouring the sweat out, maybe it's cool, pale, clammy skin, you may be experiencing some heat exhaustion, muscle cramps as well. It takes to another level when you're talking about heat stroke. That's when your body is malfunctioning. You are not sweating. You're turning red. Your pulse is increasing. You may even, pass out in a situation like that. So listen to your body in this heat. Make sure that you're acting upon it, taking frequent breaks, and of course, staying hydrated as we go through the next few days. Once again, the weather headlines. The heat is here to stay. It will peak Thursday and Friday. We'll have afternoon storms mainly inland, but there'll be a little bit more widespread this evening, and less humid air is 1 week away. That's on Tuesday, and we're not talking about the invigorating air that we had, for instance, leading into Father's Day weekend. We're not getting dew points that are going into the 40s and low 50s anymore. We'll drop the dew points to around 60, maybe upper 50s if we're lucky, along with temperatures that are in the mid-80s. So it's still very warm and summer-like, but it's not oppressive and dangerous heat that we'll get as we finish up the week. Those times of invigorating air masses, I just don't see it. I was just looking at the overall weather pattern heading into early July, and you just see a big ridge in the jet stream that keeps reestablishing itself over the Northeast. So something to watch very, very closely. That also has implications with tropical moisture. We already have what's called potential tropical cyclone 1. By the time you listen to this, it could very well be Alberto in the southwestern Gulf. There could be over half a foot of rain that goes into Texas while the storm center goes into Mexico. But we've been talking about a very active hurricane season, so we're getting things percolating now. When you have these tropical systems forming, whether it be in the Gulf or the Caribbean, the tropical Atlantic, that's going to favor a big bump or ridge in the jet stream in the East Coast, favoring heat. We're going to have to watch it very closely. One thing about some of this moisture in the Gulf, it goes into the southeast as well and may travel along a front here later Sunday into Monday. So we'll see if we get some drenching downpours with a little bit of a tropical connection, so we could have some stronger storms that bring some drenchers in here as we look to extinguish this long-term hot stretch. And again, that formidable front is going to come through sometime on Monday. There were signs today it was going to come through during the earlier part of the day, which would be better for us versus waiting later in the day, get to another 90 and really spark some severe storms. So too early to tell the exact timing on that, but watch for that stronger front on Monday, bringing the lower humidity air back in the picture on Tuesday. That is the way it is shaping up. Wanted to drop in and talk to you about the heat, the potential storm threats, and the tropics. We'll keep you posted throughout this hot stretch in our AccuWeather forecast. That's this edition of Whether or Not. We will see you next time, rain or shine.